Hello everyone, my name is Seth, and today I'm going to give you my review of Black Phone 2. I really liked the first Black Phone movie. It's just such a solid and creepy film. Scott Derrickson did a great job with it. Ethan Hawke was so creepy and intimidating, but I think Scott Derrickson is just an incredibly talented horror director. And so when I saw that they were going to be doing a Black Phone 2, I was a little bit concerned because I didn't necessarily think it needed a sequel, and also it was based on a short story that does not have a sequel. But because of everybody who was involved, I was definitely curious and excited about it. I really liked the trailers. I trusted Scott Derrickson, and I was right to do so because I really enjoyed Black Phone 2. But before we go any farther, go ahead and like this video, hit subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you never miss a video. We're trying to get to 400 subscribers, so feel free to share this video around with any friends or family. It could really help the channel grow, and it would absolutely make my day. The Black Phone 2 follows Finn 4 years later. He is now 17 and he struggles with life after his captivity. His sister Gwen begins receiving calls in her dream from the Black Phone and sees disturbing visions of 3 boys being stalked at a winter camp known as Alpine Lake. I guess to give you an idea of kind of the vibe of this film, when the credits started to roll, literally what popped up in my mind was Scott Derrickson really just said, hey, I want to make a Nightmare on Elm Street movie and nobody's going to stop me. Honestly, this is probably one of the best Nightmare on Elm Street movies since Dream Warriors. But seriously though, I think this does have like a ton of influence from the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise, and I really appreciate that. It's just influenced by that. I could definitely see the connections. It's not trying to copy anything. It still takes it in an original way, but definitely with some echoes of familiarity with the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise. They really do lean into more of the dreams and supernatural elements in this film than they did in the first one. And even though they are taking a bigger step into more of like the supernatural kind of stuff in this film, I think it works. And I think overall, this whole film is a pretty natural step for a sequel, even though the first film might not have necessitated a sequel. We jump into things pretty quick and we catch up with our main characters pretty much right off the bat, and we instantly get a sense of what the last 4 years have been like for them. The characters are honestly really fleshed out, and honestly there's not like a ton of characters that we focus on in this film, so for the characters we meet to have their own like defined personalities and to be relatively fleshed out, even some of the lesser characters, that's just a absolute win. If the characters were just kind of bland and forgettable, then this film really wouldn't have worked, especially with how few we really focus on. Some characters get a little bit more loved from the script than the others, but I still felt like I knew all of the characters. And our main characters, Finn and Gwen, have some really great character arcs in this film. And that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for a sequel to continue to carry on the story, continue to carry on the character development. And to me, after watching this film, it doesn't feel like an unnecessary sequel. Sometimes they could just kind of feel like sequels don't really have that much of a story to tell, but they're going to tell it anyway. They're going to tell a story anyway. But I think this film works here because it feels like a natural progression of things. And I think honestly, the story they ended up telling here is a story worth telling. And one thing they do here that a sequel should do, and that they do the right way, is they expand on our characters in a natural and believable way. But that's also not just it. They expand on kind of the world that they're living in by introducing a few more supernatural elements. And we also get a little bit more on our villain, the Grabber. But this is a very important thing. They don't over-explain things. It can be so easy to just over explain things, explain why things are the way they are, why certain characters are the way they are, and really kind of like demystify everything. They don't go back and give you every single detail of the grabber's life and, basically pull like a Rob Zombie Halloween with him. But we do get to learn a little bit more about him, but it doesn't take away any of his creepiness. We understand why he's back, what he wants to accomplish. But like I said, they never just pause the movie to give him a psychological breakdown. We don't learn so much about him that it makes him not scary anymore. I will say that I think there's a couple things that's introduced into the script that I feel like is kind of unnecessary. I feel like there's a few threads that are sort of kind of just like brought up and then ignored, I would say. I almost said forgotten, but I think ignored is honestly a better word for that. It's not the biggest deal. They're not like super core script elements, but it just helps. But this just kind of takes away from the script being as tight as it needs to be. There's just a couple things that I think they probably could have cut, and I think that also goes into the pacing a little bit. I think the pacing for the most part is great. I would say probably about 80-85% of the pacing is great, but then there's just that little bit that I feel like there's just some excess fat here on the script that they probably could just cut, and that would make the pacing work even better. But also with the script, I feel like some of the dialogue is pretty clunky. They definitely use a lot of language from the time period, and while of course it makes sense for that to happen, I feel like sometimes some scenes in particular, they overuse that and it comes off as distracting and it comes off as feeling just not authentic. Not all of the dialogue is clunky and unnatural. There's just enough of it for me to have to bring it up here in this review. Sometimes it just really kind of pulled me out of the film. But one thing from the pacing that does absolutely work is building tension. Scott Derrickson does such a good job at building tension. You watch something like Sinister or even the first Black Phone, and you can see he's really, really good at that. He does such a good job of kind of making you feel uneasy, making you feel like our characters aren't safe. And then he just takes it up another level. And he keeps it there a little bit, then he takes it up another level. He's just so good at ratcheting up the tension at the right pace. And he also does such a great job of paying off the scares. He doesn't do really any of these fake scares, these fake jump scares. Like the music builds, the music gets all loud, but then it's just like a cat or something running through the trees or whatever. I hate it when horror films do that. I want every scare to actually be a real scare. And he does that. And I think when you know that there aren't any false scares, that kind of raises the tension even more. And there are definitely some really, really creepy moments in this movie that just gave me chills. I think the setting has something to do about it. You're up at this kind of camp in the woods, but it's all snowy. There's a blizzard. Just everything works together to make this just an really creepy environment, especially with the way it's shot. In this film, Scott Derrickson doesn't overuse jump scares. He uses them at the perfect time. And there was one jump scare that I saw coming. I knew there was going to be a jump scare coming a mile away, but it still got me. So that tells you how effective this is. But since I just mentioned kind of how creepy the whole vibe of the film is, I'll take some time to talk about some of the technical filmmaking things because that really plays into some of the scares. Scott Derrickson expertly uses shadows in this film. He uses darkness so well. It's never too dark where you can't see what's happening. If something is dark, it is intentional, but you can see everything that you're supposed to. Another thing that they do here, and something that I absolutely love, is they really use the visual medium. They use filmmaking techniques to really inform the audience what we're even watching. Every time we see Gwen dream, anytime we're in this kind of dream world, it switches to like Super 8 film. And it gives this real kind of grainy, gritty, creepy look to it. Derrickson loves working with this kind of medium. If you go back and watch Sinister movies, those home videos, those are some of the creepiest and scariest parts of the film. And it kind of has the same vibe. But they actually used a Super 8 camera on set. When I was watching this film, that's what I was thinking because it just looked way too good for it to be done in post. But then for some of the sequences where they had dialogue during the dream sequences, they actually used modified Super 16 film, and then they cut that down to match the rest of the Super 8 look. This is just such a super smart decision by the creative team. Like I mentioned a little bit earlier, it just makes all of the dream stuff look extra gritty and creepy, but it's also a visual shorthand that the audience can easily pick up on. And just in like a frame or two, you can distinguish between reality and the dream world. They also use some really great blocking and camera movements to really emphasize a scare and make some really nice reveals. It really just helps to spice up the film visually. And so that way it stands out more against just your kind of average run-of-the-mill horror film. One technical thing, I think for me personally, that didn't really work. So it was a few times when a character was speaking through a phone or they were speaking through a radio. And at times the effect and the distortion that they put on the voice kind of made it a little bit hard for me to fully understand what all the person was saying. It wasn't like that the whole time, but just kind of here and there. I will say though, if you are looking for more of a violent horror film during this Halloween season, this one still probably would do it for you. I think the way it's shot makes it more effective because you don't see all of the violence super clearly all of the time. You definitely see glimpses of it, but it's just enough to kind of make your mind work and think on it. And I think that's what makes it even more effective. I think the performances across the board in this film were mostly good. I want to start with the two standout performances for me, and that is Mason Thames and Ethan Hawke. Mason Thames does have a lot to work with here. His character Finn is angry and he's trying to just push down all of his emotions, and he's trying to just have this tough guy persona. But Mason Thames really gives a lot of layers to this performance. Once we really start digging into this character and we start getting more than just what's on the surface, his performance really, really shines. He has one emotional scene in particular, and it was just really captivating. And Ethan Hawke is every bit as good in this film as he was in the first one. He really leans into it, and he's such a big part, maybe one of the biggest parts of what makes the Grabber such a creepy and intimidating villain. One thing on the performance side I do have to say is that I think Madeline McGraw gives a little bit of an inconsistent performance. She does have a lot more to do in this film than she did even in the first film. I would almost say that she's kind of the main character here. I think she is a young, talented actress, but I feel like in just a few scenes here and there throughout this film, her performance kind of fell flat a little bit. She does have some scenes where her performance was really, really good, but that's kind of where the inconsistency comes in. Some of it is really, really good. Some of it's just a little bit flat. And everyone else in their roles was a range of solid to good. Overall, I really liked Black Phone 2. I think this is just a really fun and solid movie. I had a great time with it. Was it a sequel that we necessarily needed? No, it wasn't, but I think they did everything that a sequel should do. And honestly, if they take that same mentality and they have a good idea, I would be interested in a Black Phone 3. They expanded on the world, expanded on the characters, and expanded on the story. They took a great and honestly relatively natural step forward in the story, and it just worked for me. And they do all of that without over-explaining and demystifying everything. We had a lot of really, really fun technical filmmaking stuff here. I love all of the stuff with the Super 8. It's a creepy film with some really good scares. Ethan Hawke and Mason Thames are awesome. Maybe we get a few inconsistent performances. The pacing isn't perfect. I think they could probably cut maybe 5 to 8, maybe 10 minutes out of this film. And sometimes the dialogue just does not sound natural at all. However, I do think I like this one more than I like the first one. And I definitely like the first one. So if you're looking for honestly an effective and fun movie this Halloween season to watch, I'm definitely going to recommend you go out and see The Black Phone 2. I'm going to give Black Phone 2 a 4 out of 5. But that's it. That's my review of Black Phone 2. Have you seen this film? Let me know what you thought in the comments section down below. I would love to have a conversation with you about it. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Don't forget to like this video, hit subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you never miss a video. You can follow me on social media pretty much anywhere at CinemaSeth, and I'll see you next time.